Thanks, Elliot. Current temperature right now at 63 degrees at the weather station News Talk 630 WPRO and 99.7 FM. We have a few more minutes right now before we're going to get the day's headlines, and we have Governor Lincoln Chafee here until 9 o'clock, and we did solicit some questions from our listeners. Again, we want to get to the businesses. We only have a couple of minutes in this segment, Governor, but small business owners say that your budget proposal is a killer to them.
Again, I didn't create this mess. This is a terrible year, and no tax is a good tax. But I do think that if we're going to look to the future, we've got to have part revenue and part cuts. And I can promise the taxpayers of Rhode Island that I will be looking at areas to cut government. We already are. That's what I did as mayor. Again, go back to my executive experience and did it successfully in the city of Warwick. I'll do it as governor here in Rhode Island. But we do have to eventually have a balanced budget, and a campaign that part of it has to be on revenue. No tax is good.
So if the tax break, say for Hasbro, which is so obviously important to the state of Rhode Island, Hasbro, big tax break for them. The deal with 38 Studios with Kurt Schilling, people were unsettled by the $75 million. Now you have someone like Takeo, who I'm very familiar with, an institution really as far as heating and air conditioning systems, but they employ a lot of people here in Rhode Island, and he's thinking of not expanding. He's putting the brakes on, saying, "Whoa, I'm not doing as well as my dad did." How do you justify the big tax breaks, and then the smaller businesses have to pick up even more of the slack with the 1% and the 6%?
Well, in the Hasbro tax break, that is in exchange for jobs created. It really is a win for the state, and it's a 3-year deal in which the jobs that are created generate a certain amount of income tax, and that's offset by the sales tax that we forgive them as they build their buildings and make their investment over 3 years. And, of course, those people, not only are we getting the income taxes, which is a one-for-one loss, we lose the sales tax, but gain the income tax revenue, but also they're out spending money in the community. So that is a win. And 3 years does go by quickly. It's a good investment to keep Hasbro here growing, 300 some jobs. It's going to be very exciting for Rhode Island.
We have about 90 seconds left in this segment, so we will continue. We'll defer on the budget issue and the tax issue for just a second. But we wanted to talk not only about your official position, but personally as well. You mentioned in an interview a few weeks ago that you and your wife are talking about how you hadn't taken a vacation in quite some time. You were going to go sailing up in Bar Harbor. A lot of people are saying that might not be appropriate. One, because you're going out there. We've got just as great a sailing community down here in Rhode Island, but also, not many other people have had an opportunity to take a vacation. You regret having said that? Is that still how you feel?
No, everybody's got to get away. I mean, that if you possibly can, especially in a high-stress job.
Sure.
And Rhode Island is the sailing mecca of the world, but it's not getting away. And we have a small boat. It's just we camp on it. We just have a camp stove, and it's a chance to get away.
Recharge your batteries.
Of course.
Do you wish you said, "I'm going to camp out in Charlestown"?
I love Rhode Island. There's make no mistake about that. But you do like to get away. It's important.
You see how your words are getting twisted a little bit. You see that, right?
Yes, it's part of the job.
But it doesn't bother you?
No, you do the best you can and try and correct the record when every chance you get. But this is a great state, and I'm optimistic about its future. I talked about nattering nabobs of negativism.
That's it.
And that's unfortunate. I think we in Rhode Island we get down into that too often.
All right.
And we have a lot going for us in the state. Let's stress some of the good things we have here.
All right. It's 63 degrees at the weather station. News Talk 630 WPRO 99.7 FM. The current news time, it's 8:37.
This is a special edition of the WPRO Morning News with Tara Granahan and Andrew Gobiel. A conversation with Rhode Island Governor Lincoln Chafee. Exclusively on News Talk 630, WPRO and 99.7 FM. Now, a conversation with Governor Chafee.
WPRO News Time now 8:37. Let's get right back to it again. Governor, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. I'm taking a look at this just came down from the New York Times. Economic growth slows to a 1.8% rate in the first quarter. Budget, the economy, it is a struggle all around. And so we go back to your proposed budget and the tax calls. Ben Bernanke, you said back to the idea of what you were doing in taxing some of these non-exempt items.
Yes, I heard earlier in the news Ben Bernanke making a comment that made the stock market go up. I think that's what I heard on the news here as we came into studio. And he addressed the Governors Association in February, and he was telling us you're better off getting your sales tax into some essential items, because here in Rhode Island we have so many exemptions that the essential items don't get subject to sales tax, and so when the economy dips, that's all people spend their money on are the essential items which are not subject to sales tax. Our revenues crash, and we go through this roller coaster of revenues as the economy goes through its cycles. And if he was telling us, you're better off, you governors probably don't have the political spine to do this because it's difficult, but you're better off doing it to level out your revenue stream. And I'm sitting in my chair saying, my budget's on the way to the printer doing exactly that. We're ahead of the curve here in Rhode Island. Nobody likes this, but it'll steady out our revenue stream. And that's to all of our advantage in the future.
And I want to ask this question one more time before we start talking about an increase in revenue and the necessity for that.
And the key here is, too, as he was telling us, if you do that, you can lower your sales tax rate. And, of course, my proposal is going from 7% to 6%, and I'd like to get it down below 6%.
Have we cut everything we can in government services?
As I said, we've cut aid to cities and towns $195 million. Those are deep, deep cuts. We've made cuts to state service. You can't register a car. Try and go to DMV. It's impossible in a day to register a car, get a license, and that's because we've cut the employees from 192 to 155 at DMV. We've closed branches from 11 down to 5.
How can states like New Hampshire function,
But there's always
though?
more room to cut. I mean, I enjoy providing good services at a lower price, and I do that every day. And I'll continue to look for areas to consolidate and to make cuts. But make no mistake, there have already been deep, deep cuts to aid to cities and towns, to state government. Human service is a tough one, as I said earlier. The nursing homes, the adults with disabilities, the children with severe disabilities, these are very expensive people to the taxpayers.
And of course, we don't want to be negative. We try to stay positive. I'm a big cheerleader for the state of Rhode Island. I chose to stay here and raise my family here. But then you look at other states, New Hampshire, and they may not be thriving, but we definitely are sort of, the black eye of New England. So to not cheer on the negativity, so to speak, I know you want to stay positive, but people are just saying, what is he doing? How do we rectify this? We can't just keep shuffling around this budget proposal. People can't afford any more taxes.
Well, Andrew mentioned the New York Times, or he was reading about the economy not growing. But don't forget, when I was in the Senate and we had surpluses, the economy was so good that companies couldn't find people. That's what I heard more often back in 2000 as I campaigned for companies saying, we can't find people. I'd like to add 10 people. I can't find them. That's how good the economy was. And we had surpluses. And then the new administration came in and started cutting the taxes to the wealthy and going on a spending spree. Back came deficits. And it was me. I was standing up saying, why are we cutting taxes for the wealthy? They're doing fine. Why are we getting into a war in Iraq that's going to cost us trillions? Why are we adding a prescription drug benefit to Medicare before we make reforms to Medicare? And deficits came back. I was the one standing up saying, this isn't good for our economy. And now I'm governor inheriting this very, very difficult economy, which I kind of feel that I was vindicated on some of the positions I took in the Senate. And trying to do the best we can. I don't like taxes any more than anybody else.
Oh, my goodness.
But,
and you did stand alone in the Senate on many
right.
situations. On Iraq, you stood there on same-sex marriage. Do you enjoy standing alone? Because you seem to be standing there again.
Well, I want to look to the future. And I do feel I did that in the Senate, and I did it as mayor. And that's what I'm doing here. This is a no-fun budget. There's no doubt about it. We all knew that. Fiscal year 2012 was going to be the worst year in many, many decades in Rhode Island, and we just have to take our cod liver oil and we'll get well.
Maybe a little inside baseball here, talking about standing with colleagues, a Republican, independent. Now there's been some talk that you're toying, perhaps, of changing parties yet again and becoming a Democrat. Is that true, and where do we stand with that?
No, it goes back to the vacation comment. You make a comment about trying to get away, and all of a sudden it becomes a huge story, and I was talking, I love being an independent. And that I don't know how that story got started. I really enjoy it. I'm the only independent governor in the country, and I like that notoriety.
So you're not going to join the Democratic Party?
No.
Okay.
No plans.
You mentioned taking your cod liver oil, and we'll get through it. I don't think people listening at home can even imagine how we're going to get through the pension crisis. There's just too many people obviously living a lot longer.
That's the
if we have to put it in a nutshell.
Yes.
Are you working with General Treasurer Gina Raimondo?
Of course. Yes, this is a huge issue. We're putting $228 million into this year's budget. We, the taxpayer, to prop up our pension fund. That's a huge number, and it's going up. We can't afford it. We've got to make changes.
Why are we still taking taxpayer money if it's been known to be unfunded for so many years. We had Nancy Mayer on the other day saying 15 years ago I was saying that. Why are we sitting here saying we didn't know it was coming when we did?
This is actually it's an international issue. On the cover of The Economist was all about pensions, not just public pensions. It's General Motors and big companies. And the point is exactly on the cover of The Economist, it was a 70-year-old sitting on a Harley Davidson, big chopped motorcycle. And the point is that people are living longer. And it's breaking the back of these pension funds. And then with the crash of the market, because even little Rhode Island, we have, $6-7 billion in our pension fund. Right. And the interest that came through a good market helped us through those difficult times when people put their head in the sand, because the market was good, the revenues were coming in on our $6 billion, $7 billion portfolio, and now the market crashed. We have people living longer, but with good decision making, we'll reform it and make it affordable.
With all due respect, Governor, I mean, that's a bit of a platitude with good decision-making. It's really going to take somebody to twist some arms, to get the unions to sit down, to get all of the different employees to sit down, to get the stakeholders to sit down to do that. I mean, do you have the backbone to do that arm twisting?
Yes, I did it as mayor, and I've showed backbone as a senator, and certainly no one would deny that. And I like a challenge. This is a big one. We've got to confront it. You can't put your head in the sand anymore. And I make my decisions very deliberatively, and you have to do it with the unions and the Speaker of the House and the President of the Senate and the committee chairs. That's the way you get it done.
So is there one specific step that we're taking right now that we can report on? We've got General Treasurer Raimondo working on this. I mean, can you sit there and say, let's convene some sort of a commission to talk about it?
Oh, yes,
let's get together.
Oh, yes. There's an urgency here. We just can't afford to keep putting these huge numbers in the budget. In fact, at the Retirement Board, they lowered the assumption of what we assume we get from the stock market, as I talked about earlier, correct, down from 8% to 7.5%, which cost us another $100 million, but it was the right move. So already in next year's budget, we have a $100 million brick on the load.
You had a heavy backing from the unions to get into the governor's office, and people are saying, well, maybe he's not going to cut back on the union handouts because they got him in the office.
I've had union support, and I have not had it. And I make my decisions in the best interest of Rhode Islanders, and that's what I'll always do.
Do you feel comfortable going to them saying, hey, we can't afford this. You are bankrupting the state of Rhode Island. They backed you, but now you have to turn around and say, you got to give back.
Of course, because it's in their interest. They want their school teachers to have a pension when they retire. They want their...
So they're coming to the table with you saying, you know what, okay, Governor, we helped you get there, and we will also go so far as to say we'll put in more to our contributions. They're saying that?
I do have that in this year's budget. I take the July 3% raise and put it into the state employee pension. That's $40 million that I could have used to not have heating oil or something else, but I'm putting it into the pension fund, making decisions that affect the future of Rhode Islanders. I do believe, as tough as this budget is, it's an investment in the future.
We have one more segment coming up. I'd like to ask right now, if we could quickly, and if you can answer this in 30 seconds, if it's all possible. Jim Hummel, our reporter, has done a superlative job taking a look at the state 911 system. Delays right there. It's underfunded. We've got people who work in the system saying that we need to get this fixed. What can you do? Can you sit down with those who are running the 911 system and say, look, we need better management, we need more money?
Well, that's another ramification of turning the budget over to the General Assembly. Then they just start picking up every little revenue stream. And that 911, there's a tax on our telephone bill that's supposed to go to 911. And they keep siphoning that. Paul's here about, $15 million?
That's correct, Governor.
$15 million into the general fund.
So can you change that?
I do in my budget. I do not take that $15 million out of the dedicated revenue stream it's designed for, 911.
All right, we have to take a quick break for 8:46 from the... Thanks, Elliot. Current temperature, it is 63 degrees at the weather station. News Talk 630 WPRO, 99.7 FM. We are having a conversation with Governor Lincoln Chafee, trying to get as much out of him as we possibly can in 1 hour. But, Governor, you mentioned... It just seems that to the average person, there's a lot of numbers going around, there's a lot of paper shuffling going around, and not enough money to go around. So can you see at some point getting together with the legislature? They did not fully accept your proposal, obviously. Whether or not it was DOA is of question. They are now tweaking it, I would imagine, and now it's going to come back to you. Can you see a budget proposal with zero tax increase?
I don't think that's possible, as much as we'd like to have that, Tara. Every politician wants to have a no tax increase, but this $295 million deficit, because the federal stimulus money disappeared, that's a cliff we just fell off. And don't forget, we've made the deep cuts to aid to cities and towns, to state government. Of course, we'd like to do it all on cuts. I campaigned telling the truth. I just don't think we can do it all on cuts. So for me, it's half on cuts and half on new revenue.
And you did campaign on that. You're the only one out there saying.
I was telling the truth.
So are you surprised to hear that people are angry?
No. This is no tax is good. But my barber Ernie, I think he was right representing Rhode Islanders, and he did say this to me. He said, "I don't want to pay that tax, but if I knew it's going to go to a better Rhode Island, I'll pay it." And that's our challenge. The taxpayers, we're not going to squander this opportunity. Your revenue that you're working so hard to help us with, paying these extra taxes, we're going to make it work for a better Rhode Island. That's our challenge. That's what I want to, a year from now, tell the Rhode Islanders. We're in better shape. We're in better shape, and now we can start cutting. We'll always be cutting where we can, but we start to cut some taxes, too.
I was just going to say, if we lose small businesses here and there, they close down, a restaurant here, a barber there, whatever, a dry cleaning service. If we lose small businesses, then you have families that have to hit possibly it's the social service department, the welfare department, get the card to go food shopping. Is it not just a trickle-down effect? When you say we have to raise taxes, it could just snowball into a worsening economy.
Well, don't forget Massachusetts raised their sales tax, and they're doing fine. I mean, I don't like taxes. Don't misunderstand me. But Deval Patrick raised the sales tax from 5 to 6.25.
How are they doing fine, though? They have a pretty big unemployment problem, too.
But they're doing much better than Rhode Island. They addressed their issues. Connecticut governor's just proposing doing what we're doing here, my budget here in Rhode Island, broadening it into some of the services. And President Clinton came in very difficult times in 1992 when he was elected, 93, and put in a revenue package that the economy took off. So not all indications are that if you get your fiscal house in order, that's very important to businesses. They don't like to see deficits.
What's the time plan to getting the fiscal house in order? Another 6 months, a year, 2 years, 5 years?
Well, the pensions are the toughest long term. I think if this budget passes somewhat, it's not going to pass exactly the way I proposed it. I never thought that was going to happen, but somewhat where we can really have a solid. That's why the ABCs. This is very important to our future, and then or maybe we can tackle the pensions this year. But that's a long process, the pension unfunded liability. But we're going to get there. That's what the people expect of us, and we're going to do it.
Talking about unemployment here in Rhode Island and how we are one of the worst states in the nation. We know that. I mean, that's the
Fourth
truth.
highest.
Yeah, which is not good. But the best way to remedy that is obviously better training for this workforce. However, how can we do that? I mean, because that's going to require more investment.
And I do make those investments. These are hard to do in a tough year, but I put in $10 million to higher education. They wanted $30 million. And the understanding I have is that will mean no tuition increase at CCRI. And that's the first step into the workforce. Into CCRI, get some training, some accounting training, and then into the workforce, whatever it is, some nursing training at CCRI. And I'd like to keep that going, keep the investments. You don't have tuitions going up at URI, RIC, and CCRI. We want it affordable. That's what made America great. The ability to go to the state universities. We've
got these small businesses who take a look at these as potential employers.
Also, Andrew, let me add, I also put in $14 million to Deborah Gist's school funding formula. Okay. Finally, Rhode Island has a school funding formula, but it needed $14 million to be fully funded.
Which is now under fire by Pawtucket and was it Woonsocket, I believe, as well, who are suing for better implementation of that. We talk about what's going on right now.
So those are investments. We had $10 million to higher education, $14 million to elementary and secondary in these tough times. I'm willing to bite that bullet.
And those are the things
to look to the future.
Right. You have to take care of the elderly. You have to take care of the kids in the future. And I think we all agree on that. We had a representative from the Rhode Island Energy Office on, something to do with gas prices. It was a story. I won't criticize his interview, but looking into that, who knew there was an energy office? There were maybe 10 employees. Someone in the office was making over $200,000. Then you open up the Providence Journal, and the salaries at the state houses, some 20-something-year-old kid is making $88,000 without a college degree. Have you cut everywhere? Are there too many people on the state payroll that just because they were grandfathered in or they're related to Uncle Joe over there? I mean, have we looked at every department and the necessities?
Well, don't forget, we've had 8 years of Don Kacheri who never addressed the revenue side. Everything was on cuts. And as I said, $195 million to aid to cities and towns, the DMV going down from 192 to 155, closing branches,
And I know you inherited the problem, and President Obama inherited the problem, and we know that. But now we have to go forward. So I'm asking, who helped you put your budget together, and did you go line by line, department to department? Do we really need all these people? It's the number one employer in the state, correct? The state is the number one employer?
Well, I took the oath of office on January 4th, and the budget was pretty much halfway done. That's the way it works. It starts in October putting together a budget. So as we finalized it and made the changes I wanted to make, I realized right away we have to start on fiscal year 13. The day this goes to the printer, we got to start on next year's budget to answer exactly what you're saying. Can we reform these departments? In 3 weeks, I couldn't do it, putting together this budget.
But we did go through. You did go through them with some kind of a team to say all of these positions are necessary.
We're doing that now.
If we could, just in the limited
but
time.
I don't want to budget something that I don't realize the savings. People are saying, well, why don't you consolidate? Well, if we have savings, then I'll budget it. But I don't want to budget $40 million in savings and then not realize and have a $40 million hole next year. That's what we keep doing in the state.
We've got chambers of commerce upset with the proposal. We've got small businesses rallying outside of your office on Smith Hill. If you had an opportunity, we've got 2 minutes here to go and address these small businesses, the backbone of Rhode Island. They are the economic driver of this state. What do you say to them to say, look, I know what I'm doing, to put them at ease? We need to bite the bullet.
Yes, just yesterday at breakfast, I was in the Northern Rhode Island Chamber of Commerce, filled with businesses there, a full room, and took their questions, explained my budget. The main thing is this was a difficult year. This is one of the worst years. Loss of federal stimulus money, huge deficit. We all knew that. FY12 is going to be the bad year, no surprise. And I do it half on cuts, half on revenue, and we do invest. And you said earlier, we have to invest in education. I'm doing it, and that's our future. Invest in our roads and bridges. Right now we're borrowing at DOT and paying $43 million in interest. My budget gets us off that destructive payment of interest.
And the roads are a mess.
And the roads are a mess because we're paying $43 million in interest when we could be putting that into better roads and bridges. My budget bites the bullet and puts in $12 million this year over a 5-year period. Will end the borrowing at DOT. No more $43 million in interest.
No one's saying it's an easy job, Governor.
That's right. That's right. But it's
but
a great
you ran
state.
And you're
it's
there.
A great state.
And you have a lifetime of politics behind you. What do you think your dad would say with how you're doing as governor today?
Look to the future. It's all about the children and grandchildren.
All right. He's Governor Lincoln Chafee. He came here for an hour as promised and hopefully got a lot of our questions answered from our listeners. So we appreciate the feedback and we appreciate your time.
You're welcome, Tara. Andrew?
You're more than welcome at any other time. It is now 8:56.